reached out in a beautiful motion and took a little book that was amongst my books. And I looked at it, and it had Holy Bible written on it. And it was that Bible that was given to me in 1952 when I was a street kid at Bethany Hall in East Brunswick. It had followed me wherever I went in life. And so, being totally unfamiliar with what was inside the Bible, I walked back out to the kitchen. All the fear of God was gone. I felt at peace. I walked out to the kitchen table. I put the Bible, for some unknown reason, I turned it over on its back page cover. And I sat down behind it. And I opened the back page cover, and someone had written in pencil, Romans 1:16, Romans 10:9, Acts 16:30-31, and John 3:16. Well, I didn't know there was an Old Testament, a New Testament, or anything else. And it took me ages to find the first one, which I found, Romans 1:16, which says, For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to all who believe, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. Well, that didn't mean much to me at all. If anything, I found the second one, Romans 10:9, which said that if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. And I couldn't make any sense of that one either. So I found the third one after ages, Acts 16:30-31. He brought them out and said, Sirs, what must I do to be saved? And they replied, Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved, and thy house. For the first time, it clicked in. And thy house, I realised, was referring to myself and my family. We could be saved. And so I found the fourth one, John chapter 3, verse 16. For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, so that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but shall have everlasting life. I thought about that for a few moments, and then it came right into me. I looked up from where I was seated at the table, and it was like I could see through the wall, and through the roof, and through the sky, and right up there in eternity. Out there, beyond the beyond, was the true and living God, and he had sent his Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, into this world to save such a foul, despicable, and wicked man that I was. I cried, and I cried, and I cried. I couldn't stop crying. So I put my arm on the table and rested my head on my arm, and it got worse. I began to go into sobbing. And the Bible was wet. I was a mess. And I couldn't stop sobbing. And my ribs and my body was vibrating and paining with the sobs. I was really hurting that God should do that for me out there. Sent Jesus to save me. I thought, I'll have to have a wash. I'm a real mess. And so I got up off the table and I pushed the chair under the table. I turned around and I took 1.5 steps. I didn't complete the second step to turn right to go back up the passage to have the wash. And on the half step, the first half step, Jesus stood in front of me, and I was held in that position, totally motionless. There was not a thing I could do. I couldn't move, and yet I had no fear. And then I noticed that coming out of my forehead were thousands of tiny little stars, silver stars, going up. And I thought, I'll look up and see where they're going. But I didn't even have control over my eyes to do that. I could just see the curve of where they went up. Then Jesus stood in front of me and breathed on me. And I felt his words go in and come up up through my neck, and there was an explosion in my mind, and the word Truth came into my mind. Truth. It was at that moment I knew the truth, that Glennis wasn't to blame for all these troubles or in the marriage. It was me, the monster, that I saw on that stage in that dream. And then Jesus breathed on me again, and I felt this beautiful, just like I cannot explain the true horrors of hell where I went, I cannot explain the true glory of what happened when he breathed on me. This beautiful, warm, electrified air went right through me, and it was pure, holy love that I'd never experienced before. And I fainted. And I have no memory. I have to say this because it's part of this testimony and it's what happened to me. I have no memory of what happened next or where I went. But I came to, in the next room, coming through the brick wall, about 2 metres up from the floor. And I saw as it came through the brick wall, part of the spirit world where I had been, and I saw a male being standing on the right, which I presume was to stop me from going back in there, what was there coming out. But I looked down, and there below me, on the floor, was my body. And it was, the arms were crossed and up against the wall, and my head was resting there like that, between the arms, and I was in a kneeling position with the knees almost crossed. And that's what I saw when I came through the brick wall and looked down. And as I looked down, God drew my body up, and I came in, my spirit and soul again, into my chest area, and I freely walked down the passage, no more fear of God, and I had that wash that I really needed. With the thought, as long as I live, I'll probably never tell another human soul what's happened, because they'll never believe it. And that night, I had another powerful dream. And in this dream, I was looking for my second son, Ian, and he was lost. And I was on this very narrow, about half a metre wide road, which seemed to be sealed because it was black like tar, and it wound around and around and around, and I went looking for Ian along this road, and it went for kilometres after kilometres until I became quite footsore, and I came to this small town, and on the left were 2-storey buildings. Every building was 2-storey high, and the strange thing about this town was every door seemed to be facing me. And because I was so terribly lonely, I thought, I'll go in and ask, knock on one of those doors and ask if they'd seen Ian and know where he is. And my left foot went off the road, and immediately a voice inside me spoke audibly and said, and clearly, no, you must walk on. And so reluctantly, against my will, I continued to walk for hours along this long, narrow, winding road until I came to the end of it, and there was a massive warehouse. And out the front was a young lad, a fine-looking boy. And I said to the boy, excuse me, do you know my son Ian? He said, yes. I said, I'm looking for him. He said, he's inside the warehouse, but he doesn't really want to see you. You'll have to go in there and find him. So I went into the warehouse, and there appeared to be thousands of big wool bales everywhere. It was like a maze. And as I wended my way through amongst these wool bales, I saw him like in the form of a silver flash, just a flash. And eventually, I thought, I've got to trap him. It's the only way. So I hid behind these bales of wool, and as he ran past, I grabbed him, and he turned around, and we faced each other, and there was joy in his face and in my heart.